Now, more on this cost of living crisis. New figures released show that 2 million people in the UK can't afford to eat every day due to the cost of living crisis. In fact, 1 in 7 live in homes where people have eaten smaller portions, skipped meals or gone hungry all day because they couldn't afford or access food.
Well, Kat Hobbs joins us. She's the director of We Own It. That's an organisation that campaigns against privatisation. She joins us in the studio. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
First of all, can you just set out to all of us, really, why privatisation is in any way sort of linked to cost of living?
Absolutely. So we've been seeing over the past 40 years that we have been paying more for all kinds of things. So we're paying more since privatisation for our energy bills, for our water bills, for our transport costs, public transport costs. And so really what we have right now is an economy that works for a handful of shareholders rather than working for ordinary people. What we've seen in the cost of living crisis is this has got so much worse. And it's absolutely shocking that we're now in a situation where, people are going to food banks and asking for food where you don't have to cook it with gas so that they can just get by. But the reason for this is because a handful of people are making an absolute killing right now. They're making huge, huge profits at all of our expense.
Yeah, the timing of it doesn't look well, does it, either? I mean, Isabel, we were debating earlier on, and you were saying about the oil industry, oil and gas industry, and you, in fairness, said that they are disproportionately taxed.
Yeah, they're taxed higher than other industries.
Yeah, but I would like to hear what Kat thinks of that.
Well, I don't think that's right. Shell and BP have made £150 billion in the last 10 years. If you just look at the last few months, Shell's made £7.3 billion in profits, BP £5 billion. They've got so much money, they don't know what to do with it. And those profits, Shell's profits, for example, that's a tripling of profits. It's the highest profits they've ever recorded. And that's at a time when Shell Energy is putting up people's direct debits by double.
So you're all in favour of a windfall tax, then?
Absolutely, a windfall tax, absolutely. And, the situation we have in this country is shocking, and it's a political choice. And we can see that when we look at other countries. For example, if you look at Norway, they have essentially a permanent windfall tax on their oil and gas. So for every £8 that we collect in tax, Norway collects £100. What that means in practice is that in this crisis, Norway has been able to pay for people's bills, 80% of people's bills above a capped price. So people aren't suffering in Norway.
And the oil and gas companies are still making money.
They're still making money, they're still operating, and Norway has managed to lead the green transition. They've got a publicly owned renewables company. They're setting up more of those. So they've got green renewable energy, but they're actually taxing the oil and gas.
What's interesting, David Mellor comes on to our programme to review the papers quite often, of course, a Thatcherite minister, and he also has come out and said he's in favour of seeing a windfall tax being imposed. So it's not necessarily a left argument anymore. What could the government be doing to tackle? I mean, we talk about 2 million people in this country going hungry. I mean, that's when you sort of down tools and go, OK, look, something's going wrong.
There's something wrong with your priorities, if that's what you think. I mean, it's an obvious bias towards shareholders over ordinary people.
Really, really obvious. What we see, for example, so windfall tax, absolutely, but the government needs to go much, much further than that. And there are so many tools they could use. So right now, our grid, so the transmission and distribution that takes energy to people's homes, that's all private monopolies. They have the highest profit margins of any business, over 40% profit margins. And so, for example, if you're in the northeast, your electricity is brought to you by a company owned by Warren Buffett, the US billionaire. He's making a huge amount of money. If you're in London and the southeast, it's Li Ka-shing, a Hong Kong billionaire. He made $237 million dividend last summer and the summer before. All of those profits going out of the system, so the government could bring the grid back into public ownership, which is a normal thing in other countries. And then more things that they could do. France has a publicly owned energy supply company, EDF. And what that means is that in this crisis, they've limited the energy bill rises to 4%. So we're seeing rises of doubling of people's direct debits, and they're seeing 4%.
So you want to see a cap brought back in. But I just want to go back to the shareholder point, because a lot of the shareholders for these big companies are pension organisations, and those pension, you know, whether it's Transport for London, whoever it may be, they'll be standing to gain from seeing these big profits.
Yeah, a little bit, but actually pensions are a very tiny bit of the pot, and so I don't think we need to worry about that. What we need to worry about is the people who can't afford to live in everyday life, and that's pensioners too. You know, pensioners are really suffering in this crisis. We see, you know, 2 out of 5 people right now can't afford to heat their homes properly in the winter. This isn't a sustainable situation, so we have to take some bold action. Another thing the government could do, by the way, is insulating people's homes. It's an absolute no-brainer. You know, they're sort of implying we can't do anything. They cut the funding in 2013 for the insulation programme. We have the least energy-efficient homes in Europe. So we're in this situation where shareholders are making money, people can't afford to heat their homes, they can't afford to feed their children. It's absolutely unsustainable, and it's a political choice that the government is making. OK,
Kat Hobbs is the director of We Own It. If you're watching that and you've been affected by any of these issues, let us know. We want to hear from you. Are you one of those 2 million people who are making these awful decisions to skip meals or indeed not being able to feed their children? We are the People's Channel. Let us know your thoughts.
Yeah. So in the last 3 months alone, 60% of you are really finding it difficult to pay your bills. Are you surprised to that? Have you got a solution to that? Whose fault is this? What would you do to put things right?